Hello, this is Dean Atta, and I am here for a time with you. We're about to have a live conversation. I've got some pre-prepared questions that I'm going to read out when we get to it, but I'm also going to share some of my poetry from the Black Flamingo. And I realise I've put these lovely flowers there, and they're now casting a shadow on my face, which I didn't see before. I think the sunlight has moved. But I got these flowers from my publisher for a very special celebration or something that we can't even talk about. So I don't know why I'm mentioning it. But I'm going to move them because they're casting a shadow on me, and that's not what we want right now. So sorry, flowers. Happy. Oh, that's not what it is. It's something else. How about that? No. Oh my gosh, there's so much going on in this room. I think it's this plant. It's just all the plants in my house are casting different shadows on me, and I can't tell which one is doing what. And we're going to carry on. So happy National Poetry Day. And my name is Dean Atta, and I'm here to read from the Black Flamingo and talk to you about my process as a writer, and also answer some of your questions that I've been sent in already. So we'll just enjoy the very dappled light, and I can't tell which of my many plants is doing this, so I'm not going to fix it. But I'm really excited to be here and share with you some of my poetry. I'm going to open this curtain to get a bit more even light on me. So I'm going to read from the Black Flamingo first, and then I'm gonna come to some questions, and I can see the chat. So if you have questions you want to ask, do add them to the chat. So thank you, Izzy, Daisy, and Hannah, for your lovely comments. Happy National Poetry Day, Izzy, and thank you. I'm glad you like the flowers. I'll put them back because if they're not what's causing this, there we go. We'll just have them there so we can see them. So it's all about the voice. You don't need to see me. I'm going to read to you, so sit back and enjoy. I'm going to share from The Black Flamingo, which is my YA novel in verse about a gay mixed-race teenager called Michael growing up in London and finding himself at university in Brighton, becoming a drag performer called The Black Flamingo. And you meet Michael in the book at age 6, and he grows up, and you see him flourish and spread his wings and find out who he is in lots of different ways through performance, but also through friendship and wise words from family members and people that he kind of encounters on his journey. So the first thing I'm going to do is read from the very beginning of the book, the prologue of The Black Flamingo. And this book is dedicated to my grandfather, George, and I'll tell you why later, in fact. So this is the prologue. I am the black flamingo. The black flamingo is me, trying to find myself. This book is a fairy tale in which I am the prince and the princess. I am the king and the queen. I am my own wicked witch and fairy godmother. This book is a fairy tale in which I'm cursed and blessed by others, but finally, I am the fairy, finding my own magic. When female flamingos lay eggs in the zoo, the eggs are taken from them and put into incubators. The zookeepers give dummy eggs to flamingo couples to nest with, while the zookeepers watch their behavior to figure out who will make the best flamingo parents. When the incubated eggs are almost ready to hatch, they decide which couple will be given normal eggs and which will be left with those that never contained precious life. I often feel like a bad egg that was not meant to be, like a dummy egg cracked open, an impossible thing, but somehow living and thriving, defying zookeepers' intentions, an experiment they watch and patiently wait to see what might become of me, to see how I survive without complete love. And the book has some beautiful illustrations, so you can see an egg design there. Alice Duggan and Shika Kalors were responsible for the beautiful look of this book. And you can see every page is a poem. So this is a series of poems that tell you a story. And this is the very beginning of the story. This is Michael, and he's 6 years old. Today is my 6th birthday, and I'm hiding in my room. Last year, for my birthday, Uncle B bought me this Casio watch. Look, it lights up and is water resistant. That means I can wear it in the bath. Last night, when Mummy was making dinner, I snuck into her bedroom and looked inside her wardrobe, parting clothes to see the back where she always hides my presents. I picked up the parcel, feeling the shape of the long, thin box inside the silver wrapping paper. It was definitely the right shape to be a Barbie. I carefully peeled the sellotape at the end and peeked underneath the wrapping paper at the top of the box to see a green logo. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I told Mum 2 months ago, if you only get me one present this year, please can it be a Barbie? So, to find out if Michael gets the Barbie, you'll have to read the book, but I'm going to jump ahead. So Michael, you can see, is a boy who wants a Barbie doll. He's a very sweet boy, and you meet him at the beginning when he's 6, but he does, grow up and has lots of different experiences in the book that help shape his personality. And thank you, Daisy. Daisy says I sound fabulous, and we've got more, happy National Poetry Day from Shirley, and loving the art. It does add a lot to it. So I'm really grateful for the way this book looks, how beautiful it is. And throughout the book, Michael writes poems that kind of give him some solace and help him come to terms with things. One of the things he has to come to terms with is being from what people might call a broken home. And he's written a poem called Broken Home. And in the book, it kind of exemplifies an experience, but also his love of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles coming out in this poem about turtles. Broken Home. Because the turtle carries its home on its back, it does not have to search for one. It is born with a soft shell that hardens as it grows. The turtle's backbone is part of its shell, meaning an accidental attack could break the turtle's back, leaving the turtle with a broken home it cannot escape from. And one of the things that Michael really cares about is his dad not being around, and he writes this poem called The Men Who Are Not My Dad. My sister's dad is not my dad. Uncle B is not my dad. Our Father in heaven is not my dad. My RE teacher is not my dad. My PE teacher is not my dad. My English teacher is not my dad. My drama teacher is not my dad. Bob Marley is not my dad. Idris Elba is not my dad. Will Smith is not my dad. Jay-Z is not my dad. My own father is not my dad. And he's searching throughout the book for role models, particularly black male role models that can kind of give him some guidance. And someone he really looks up to is not black. It's his white grandfather in Cyprus. And when he goes to visit his grandfather in Cyprus, this is the first sighting of the black flamingo. And this is where the kind of metaphor for the book comes from. And this is with, Michael and his grandfather in Cyprus. Grandad goes back inside. He draws my attention to the news. The story, a black flamingo has landed on the island. An expert on screen explaining it is the opposite of an albino. Too much melanin, he says. Camera pans the salt lake full of pink, but my eye is drawn to that one black body in the flamboyance. The following evening, my beach towel and shorts dry on the balcony. Couples on mopeds ride past the house. Dogs walk humans before dinner. Grandad coughs violently, then lights another cigarette. Grandma calls us in to eat. The black flamingo is on the news again. I pick the dining chair facing the TV. Grandad asks, why does it matter if he's black? Adding, the other flamingos don't care. And I am certain what he's saying is, I love you. So that was the moment that kind of began me writing this book. And yeah, it's something I'll come back to in the Q&A section, because I've got a pre-prepared question that's come in already that asks me about that. So I'll talk about it then. But if you've got questions you want to ask, do send them in. I've got a lot that have already been sent in, but I also want to answer questions from the chat. So if you have any, send them my way. So now this next poem is when Michael is much older. So you've kind of like swept through a lot of his early childhood already now. And he is going to university. So he's 18 years old. And now he's going to university. And Uncle B, who you've heard mentioned a couple times, the one who bought him the Casio watch, and the one that unfortunately isn't his dad. So Uncle B is his dad's brother. So he's kind of stood in for Dad a lot of the time. And Uncle B is now taking Michael to university. So this is his Jamaican uncle. Uncle B drives me and my stuff to university. He tells me how proud he is, asks what I'm excited about and what I'm nervous about. I don't tell him I'm nervous and excited about meeting guys, having sex, maybe a relationship. I tell him I'm excited to have my freedom. We're 5 minutes from our destination, according to his sat-nav, and we hear sirens and see flashing lights. It's the police behind us. My uncle pulls over, I think at first to let them pass, but I soon realise that they are pulling us over. They ask my uncle if this is his car, to see his licence, where we are going. They tell him it's a very nice car, ask him what he does for a living. My usually polite uncle is abrupt with the police. Ask them what business they have stopping him. Was he speeding? Was there a problem with one of his lights? Did he fit the description of a suspect they're looking for? The police say, we can be on our way and to have a nice day. They get back in their car and drive away. Are you okay? I ask. Uncle B begins. There's always something. No matter how hard you work, no matter how well you do, how successful or respectable, there's always something that reminds you you shouldn't get too comfortable. I always thought education and money was going to earn me respect, but a successful black man is a threat. Pulling me over for driving a nice car. This isn't what I wanted for your moving day, but this is what it's like to be black in this country or anywhere in the world. They interrupt our joy, our history, our progress. They know they can't stop us unless they kill us, but they can't kill us all. So you're living your life and suddenly interrupted by white fear or suspicion. They fear sharing anything. Our success is a threat. I've never heard my uncle speak in these terms of them and us. I've never thought in these terms until today. So that's an important moment for Michael in the book, where he is faced with, racism and racial profiling, and his uncle has had that his whole life, but Michael hasn't had those kind of experiences. So he's kind of learning secondhand from his uncle what that feels like. And this next poem is Michael reflecting on this kind of mixed identity. You've seen Michael in Cyprus, you've seen Michael with his Jamaican uncle, and now this is Michael kind of reflecting on bits of his identity, responding to this question that many people, people of colour in particular, or someone with a foreign accent in the UK might get asked, where are you from? I come from shepherd's pie and Sunday roast, jerk chicken and stuffed vine leaves. I come from travelling through my taste buds, but loving where I live. I come from a home that some would call broken. I come from DIY that never got done. I come from waiting by the phone for him to call. I come from waving the white flag to loneliness. I come from the rainbow flag and the Union Jack. I come from a British passport and an ever-ready suitcase. I come from jet fuel and fresh coconut water. I come from crossing oceans to find myself. I come from deep issues and shallow solutions. I come from a limited vocabulary but an unrestricted imagination. I come from a decent education and a marvelous mother. I come from being given permission to dream, but choosing to wake up instead. I come from wherever I lay my head. I come from unanswered questions and unread books, unnoticed effort and undelivered apologies and thanks. I come from who I trust and who I have left. I come from last year, and I don't notice how I've changed. I come from looking in the mirror and looking online to find myself. I come from stories, myths, legends, and folk tales. I come from lullabies and pop songs, hip hop and poetry. I come from griots, grandmothers, and her storytellers. I come from published words and strangers' smiles. I come from my own pen, but I see people torn apart like paper, each a story or a poem that never made it into a book. So, yeah, Michael finds a lot of solace in writing his poetry and giving voice to some of these internal feelings. Yeah, I've got some nice comments coming in. So, thank you for that. Yes, the Uncle B moment was very topical given Black Lives Matter. And yeah, I'll talk a bit more about that in a bit. And yeah, people are enjoying the food as well in I Come From. And yeah, I think it was a good place for me to start with I Come From, talking about food, because I think we all have to eat. And I think food is a good way into culture. And for me, I found saying shepherd's pie and Sunday roast and jerk chicken and stuffed vine leaves gives you a sense of the person who eats that food. And but I think lots of people enjoy that food as well, so it's relatable, hopefully, to other people. And when I do workshops in schools or with young people or with anyone, I use I Come From as a good kind of starting point, because you can write about food, you can write about music, you can write about different things that you love and that make you who you are, without actually ever saying which country you come from, or which part of the UK you come from even. So I think it's quite a fun way into talking about identity without having to talk about ethnicity or nationality per se. So that's why I like that piece. This piece now is so Michael is in university. He's at a university in Brighton, and this poem is when he's sitting on Brighton Beach, kind of reflecting on some of his feelings about this stage of his life. So lots of young people have just gone to university now, and I know it's a challenging time for those that are in accommodation at university. But this is Michael talking about kind of just that time of life and figuring out what you're going to do in your life, which I think I'm still doing. I think we're always figuring things out. So this is called On Brighton Beach. I let my breathing catch the timing of the waves. Meditate. I don't swim, surf, or paddle. I don't set foot in the water at all. When I need to breathe, I sit on Brighton Beach. I love to know I live on an island. I know my people are island people. I am an island, boy becoming a man. I am at university, discovering my identity. I see wide open sea stretch out before me, but I know the big city is where I'll return. When I sit here on this beach, I close my eyes, picture my position on the coastline, see the whole country, continents, and planet, feel reassuringly small. So yeah, meditation and poetry are two of the things that give Michael great solace, and they are for me as well. And so that's why kind of this character does have a lot of similarities with me. And I saw this book as like a gift to my younger self, but also to all, young people and people thinking about identity, maybe struggling, but maybe beginning to embrace as well their identity, even if it's at odds with the mainstream culture and with the norms. So this poem comes at the end of the book, but there's no spoilers in it. It's the prologue, and it's called How to Come Out as Gay. And it goes like this. How to come out as gay. Don't. Don't come out unless you want to. Don't come out for anyone else's sake. Don't come out because you think society expects you to. Come out for yourself. Come out to yourself. Shout, sing it, softly stutter. Correct those who say they knew before you did. That's not how sexuality works. It's yours to define. Being effeminate doesn't make you gay. Being sensitive doesn't make you gay. Being gay makes you gay. Be a bit gay. Be very gay. Be the glitter that shows up in unexpected places. Be typing on WhatsApp, but leave them waiting. Throw a party for yourself, but don't invite anyone else. Invite everyone to your party, but show up late or not at all. If you're unhappy in the closet, but afraid of what's outside, leave the door ajar and call out. If you're happy in the closet for the time being, play dress up until you find the right outfit. Don't worry. It's okay to say you're gay and later exchange it for something else that suits you, fits, feels better. Watch movies that make it seem a little less scary. Beautiful Thing, Moonlight. Be South East London council estate, a daytime dance floor, his head resting on your shoulder. Be South Beach, Miami, night of water and fire, your head resting on his shoulder. Be the fabric of his shirt, the muscles in his shoulder, your shoulder. Be the bricks, be the sand, be the river, be the ocean. Remember, your life is not a movie. Accept you'll be coming out for your whole life. Accept advice from people and sources you trust. If your mother warns you about HIV within minutes of you coming out, try to understand that she loves you and is afraid. If you come out at 15, this is not a badge of honor. It doesn't matter what age you come out. Be a beautiful thing. Be the moonlight too. Remember, you have the right to be proud. Remember, you have the right to be you. Thank you for listening to me read from The Black Flamingo. So do get this book from your local library or your local independent bookshop, or if you want to hear me read it to you, it's available in audiobook, and I am the narrator of the audiobook, so that would be a good shout. So I'm going to stay now and answer some questions. So I've got some that have been sent in, but do use the chat, please, and tell me, anything you want to know or anything you want to kind of like share as well. So Daisy said, what a wonderful response to where are you from? And that's not a question, just a compliment. So thank you, Daisy. And Anna wants to borrow this book from the library. Well, I'm sure Hertfordshire libraries will have it for you, or any library near you if they're open. So do look for this book in your local library. So I'm going to go to the questions that I've been sent by the team at the library, and I'm still looking at the chat intermittently. But my first question here is, what drew you to poetry as a form of expression? So I think, similar to Michael in The Black Flamingo, poetry was something I turned to when I had a lot going on the inside that I didn't necessarily know how to verbalize. So I'd write it down as a way of kind of figuring out what I was thinking or how I was feeling about any given topic. So that could have been to do with my sexuality, to do with my ethnicity, to do with also my dad not being around, much like Michael's dad. And that was my space to talk to myself. And eventually I thought, I'll show some friends and I'll share that with other people. And that was really liberating, because I soon found out lots of people felt conflicted about some of the things I did. So lots of people felt upset if their dad or mum wasn't around. Lots of people felt kind of conflicted if they were mixed race or even just not white in the UK, because there's a lot to deal with, to do with institutional racism and overt racism as well. And lots of people had a lot of feelings about, whether or not they felt they wanted to express their sexuality, to others, to come out or not. So things like that. Once I started writing about it, I saw that I wasn't alone. And also I helped other people see that they weren't alone. And it just felt like a perfect way to kind of have a dialogue in the world. And so, you put it out there, people receive it. It means different things to different people. But that was my kind of way of kind of communicating with the world. and maybe I should be doing Facebook Lives and just talking about how I felt, but I definitely feel much more articulate in a poem than I do talking. So the next question is, how is writing a novel different to writing poetry? And for me, the difference in writing a novel and writing poetry was not hugely different, because The Black Flamingo is a book of poems that tell a story. So I guess what the biggest difference was staying with the story and not going off on huge tangents, and trying to stay focused on this character of Michael. When I bring in other voices like Uncle B, that comes in as speech said to Michael. So everything's from Michael's point of view. He tells you the story. He writes these poems in his notebook, and you get to hear other voices if they're talking directly to Michael or writing to Michael, because he gets some a nice letter from a boy at school. He also has text message conversations. So there's other things other than poetry going on in the book. So, the text messages, the letters, and, some of the narration, you could set it out as prose if you wanted to, but we've set it all out to look like poetry. But it's not always poetry in the strictest sense, but it's definitely all kind of free verse to tell this story. So that's kind of the approach we took. I say we because I worked with an editor, and I think that's the biggest difference. When you're writing an individual poetry collection, you work on all your poems on your own, or maybe in a writing group, and then you kind of like treat each one as an individual, and then an editor afterwards sees the kind of like bigger picture and helps you make a book. Whereas my editor, when writing The Black Flamingo, was involved at every stage and every draft. So, she was saying, which bits could go, like, that weren't needed, and which extra bits were needed. So what I needed to write to fill in different parts of the story. So I had someone having an input all the way along, which you don't usually have with poetry when you're writing individual poems. So that was a huge difference, in fact. And then what do I prefer, writing poetry or novels? I prefer writing poetry because there's an instant gratification. But, when you write an individual poem, you could write it in like half an hour, or might take you a few days or weeks. But a novel takes like at least a year. Well, it takes me at least a year. And so you get huge gratification once you're done, but it's not instant like writing an individual poem. So I think if I want a kind of instant gratification, I write a poem. But if I want to kind of see the bigger picture and put something bigger into the world, then the novel is the form for me. So I'm going to move to the chat questions, because I think that would be nice to bring you in here. So Daisy's asked, did you consider using another narrator, or were you keen to read it yourself? Oh, for the audiobook. Oh, no one else could have read the audiobook but me. There was no question about it. It had to be me. And everyone was unanimous on that. So I'm glad, because it kind of, I wrote it for kind of my voice. I was, as I was writing the poems, I was reading them out loud, because I think all poetry should be read out loud. So I'd say, even if you don't get the audiobook and you get the actual book in writing, do read it out loud to hear how it sounds said by you. I think that's really fun. And okay, the next question I've got. Benjamin Zephaniah gives a brilliant quote to the cover of your book. That's my previous book. Is he someone you look up to? And are there other poets you hold in high regard? So definitely love Benjamin Zephaniah, and he's been supporting me and my poetry, and just been available to give me bits of advice when needed throughout my career, and that's been really fortunate for me. More recently, with The Black Flamingo, Mallory Blackman gave me a wonderful quote, and her book Noughts and Crosses is just instrumental, for YA and the possibilities of what YA poetry, well, not poetry, but what YA books can do. Other poets I look up to, so many: Michael Rosen, Jackie Kay, John Agard, and the list could go on. But many poets have kind of been involved in my life, and this book in particular, Malika Booker, was a huge help in kind of keeping me on track, making sure that the poetry wasn't lost to the storytelling, if that makes sense. So she was really pushing me to bring out metaphors and imagery and the musicality of the poetry in the Black Flamingo. So I owe a great debt of thanks to for helping me with the book, and all of Malika's Poetry Kitchen for their input along the way and still now. So yeah, there's many people as on top of that. Lemsey Say, Charlie Dark, Jacob Sam LaRose. I would just go spend the rest of this time talking about them, but we've got lots of questions. So I'm going to ask myself another question. This is really funny. Anna says on the chat, do you write every day? No. Particularly like a day like this where I've got couple of events, and I've also, might have been recording things or doing emails, and some days are quite admin heavy for me, and so I'm kind of organizing stuff or doing recordings or doing live events and school events and stuff like that, and then other days I've blocked it out to write. So I'd say on any given week I might be writing 3 or 4 days, but I'll have at least 1 or 2 days which will be like admin, recording, and kind of that sort of stuff that isn't actually the writing. But what I've done also is made sure I attend lots of writing workshops. I'm in a couple of regular groups. I'm part of a group with the Scottish BAME Writers Network, led by Hannah Lavery, and we kind of write every Friday, which is really incredible. I'm also part of Malika's Poetry Kitchen, and we meet fairly regularly, like fortnightly usually, and we do some great writing together as well, and we take turns leading that one, which is really fun, because we get different input from different poets. And I also kind of sign up to workshops whenever I have the time and the money, because poetry workshops can be expensive. But what's been really wonderful that lots of people have been putting lots of free workshops on during this time, because we know how important it is to be connecting with one another in a time like we're in. So writing has been a great thing to connect and also to kind of like get through this time together. So next question, have you always wanted to be a writer? It's not a case of want, it was more a case of like, it was a thing I was good at. I was also, like when I was younger, good at performing, and so I did lots of theatre, musical theatre, singing, dancing, acting, and I kind of fell out of love with that because of auditions, really, like, and having to be chosen, and feeling bad if you weren't chosen, and so with poetry, there was always open mics, and you could always sign up and find somewhere to perform. You could always put your work online and people could find you. So it was less, there was less gatekeepers with poetry, especially spoken word poetry. Obviously that changes when it comes to the idea of getting published, but when I was starting out in poetry, it's more about performing and being heard, whether that was at open mics or online. And there were many avenues to do that. And like lots of great organizations like Apples and Snakes and Spread the Word in London and the Roundhouse gave me lots of opportunities. And the Lyric Theatre in Hammersmith, in fact, as well. They were great. So yeah, I just found lots of places to perform. And that kind of became what I was, most known for, most passionate about, and eventually it became something that paid, and I didn't expect that, but it happened, and so I stuck with it. And then another question, Diane has asked, what did you do in school? So in school, I as well as like doing, singing and acting, and I did drama for A level, and I did English, and I did, was it sociology for my A levels, and then I went to university and I did philosophy and English, and then I did my master's in writing and teaching at Goldsmiths. So it was always, there was always something to do with literature and writing in there, and and so I guess it was kind of fated, but also I'm quite dyslexic, and so reading wasn't the top of my agenda. Even when I was like writing lots as a teenager, I wasn't reading as much as maybe I am now. And so I think reading more has kind of improved things for me as a writer as well. And also, audiobooks are just brilliant. And that's why I was really insistent that we have a Black Flamingo audiobook, because for me, as someone who's dyslexic, like, I love audiobooks. So the next question on this lovely list, what do you think are the ingredients for a successful poem? And that's a really cool question. And I think a successful poem is one that speaks authentically. So I think some element of truth. It can have some fantasy, some fiction, some imagination, but I think there needs to be something true, maybe a true emotion, and then you set it in a kind of metaphorical or imaginary kind of situation. But I think having some truth really helps a poem, and then just keeping your own unique voice. Unless you're doing a poem that's like a persona, so a character, I'd say, thinking about how you speak and what's unique about your way of speaking. So thinking about, if you have an accent, how can you put that across? If you speak another language, maybe putting another language other than English into the poem. If you kind of use certain slang words, if you are really passionate about a particular thing, like say you're a footballer, maybe there's football related words, or a basketball player, maybe there's related words, or you like to hike, or you like the outdoors, kind of embracing what you the vocabulary of your life and your inner landscape and the world around you, and seeing how you can put that into the poem. So being quite specific can be really good. Grounding a poem in a place and time can be really helpful as well. So like the poem on Brighton Beach that I read, I think it helps that you know where he's at, and then you can hear his kind of inner monologue, but you've got him sat in a place, in a specific kind of place and time, and so you can picture this boy in a place and time having these thoughts. So that's kind of what I think works, and other people will tell you other things. As it's National Poetry Day, who is your favourite poet? I couldn't pick one, and I've mentioned lots earlier, so I will just say someone else. Maya Angelou is probably one of my favourite poets, and I'd say her poem, either Phenomenal Woman or Still I Rise. I think those two poems just always kind of give me really good feelings, and I just feel that she's really empowered in both of those poems, and I think they're really empowering for people to listen to. And whether or not you're a black person or a woman, I think her poetry is just super empowering. So I'd say Maya Angelou for sure. And then what would you say to someone who wrote off poetry as not for me? I think reading more widely, I can totally understand why you would feel that way, because, we're not presented with the widest range of poetry, perhaps in school. I think that's changing, hopefully. And I see that, the kind of curriculum gets updated fairly regularly. And it's lovely to see when new people get added to that. But I think there's way more beyond that. So I'd say, give spoken word poetry a try. Look on YouTube. I've mentioned Apples and Snakes already, but they've got a great online series that they've been running for the past, almost 6 months now. So do look out for that to hear some of the great spoken word poets that we've got writing right now. And yeah, I just think, finding out from people maybe what's a poem you've loved, or who's a poet that you really like, and getting recommendations from people, because I think sometimes a personal recommendation can be really really great, and people are reading poetry. Maybe they're not talking about reading poetry, but I bet there's people in your life that have favorite poems that they'd love to share with you, but they've never been asked to do that before. So ask around, I'd say, and see what your friends like, and maybe because they are your friends, you might like that as well, and you might be able to have a great conversation about it too. um, Next question. This is a long one. I'm going to read. For lots of people, poetry is something that they had to study at school and they can't look at after leaving school. I guess my previous answer answers that as well. So, like, how do you entice someone to engage with the wonderful world of poetry that's out there? Definitely check out Apples and Snakes, and and see what they're offering as well. Then I have a poem in the Black Flamingo called The Black Flamingo. Why are flamingos so special to you? That's the question. And I think for me, the Black Flamingo as a metaphor really spoke to me a great deal about being Black and queer and having an experience where you felt like you often stood out from, sometimes for me, from my family, the white, side of my family, and sometimes for me when I was like even going to gay clubs when I was younger, I was like often one of the only black people there, and then it was like, do I go and say hello to the other black people because they're also black, like, and I found that at university as well, like it's like, should we be friends because we're black, like, or should we let this happen naturally? So that was something that often happened for me, where I felt like I stood out, or one or two of us were there, and that made us both feel like we stood out. And yeah, kind of some of the experiences that I had, even when I visited my family in Cyprus. I used to have dreadlocks, and I used to get pointed at on the beach and in the street, and people would say Bob Marley and want to touch my hair, and sometimes touch my hair without asking, and things like that, just feeling like a spectacle. And I think when the Black Flamingo sighting happened in 2015, it was a real spectacle, and there were articles about it everywhere, and it was on the news, and people talked about it. Maybe you missed it, but it stood out to me, and it felt like a big deal, and it felt like also a metaphor that I could really run with. And so it isn't flamingos per se, it is that black flamingo that really kind of means a lot to me. But what's great about, flamingos, a group of flamingos is called a flamboyance, or a stand. So I love the idea of being flamboyant or taking a stand, being associated with flamingos. And I kind of really ran with it, and looked at what I could find out about flamingos. I haven't become a flamingo expert by any means, but I definitely found out a few things that I thought were cool to put in the book, and presented more kind of texture and depth to my kind of narrative and metaphor about a black flamingo and how Michael becomes a black flamingo in his drag persona. And so that was something that I had a lot of fun with. And yeah, I think I kind of struck the balance of writing about flamingos, but also writing about Michael, the boy. So that was important to me. And then the themes, this is the next question, the themes of isolation, rejection, and being an outsider run through a number of poems in the book. Are these feelings you have first-hand experience of? Has your upbringing influenced your poetry? Absolutely. I have had those experiences, and I think you'd be hard pressed to find many black people or people of color who haven't had experiences where they felt isolated or rejected in some shape or form in the UK. And also, yeah, I think our upbringings will influence our writing, whoever we are. I think, people who write about stories set in boarding schools might have some like first-hand experience of that, or want to have had some first-hand experience of that. So whether you're from the inside, telling that story, or from the outside looking in, I think things you've experienced or kind of seen when you're younger definitely would influence what you write about. So for me, I wanted to bring in, some of the film references, some of the music references I have in the book, some of the people I mention, all come from some of my own experiences. So like, I love the film Moonlight, and when I saw that, I felt so seen, even though, I'm not an African American man, I'm a black British man, but seeing a black queer story on screen, also that it won, Oscars, just meant so much to me. But equally, much earlier, seeing the film A Beautiful Thing, and a kind of working class queer love story set on a council estate, like that meant a lot to me as well, to see that, and to see, yes, there was some stigma and some issues around, their relationship, but also there was a great deal of love and support in the end. And I think I like stories where things come good in the end. You can't have a story that's happy all the way through, but I definitely wanted my book to have a happy ending. And really, the ending of The Black Flamingo is almost like a new beginning for Michael, because he does drag for the first time, and then it kind of opens him up to a whole host of possibilities of what his life might look like going forward. And yeah, I think there are lots of kind of LGBT stories out there that have told the very kind of darkest sides of that experience, but I wanted to be one of the stories that gave some hope, optimism, and some light to this kind of experience as well. Um, okay, next question. Do you believe all poetry is political? I definitely do. I think whether you include things in your poems or choose not to include things in your poems, you're making a choice. And whether you reflect the times or you kind of hark back to your kind of memories of childhood, or you write in a kind of really abstract fashion, those are all choices. If you're writing avant-garde poetry, or you're writing kind of really kind of realistic kind of contemporary stuff that kind of is in the here and now, those are all choices. So I think there's politics to kind of making those choices, whether you want to kind of speak to the moment or kind of try and be timeless. But actually, sometimes it's really specific writing that can be quite timeless. We can still read, Audre Lorde and James Baldwin and see relevance to our lives today. So I think, we don't have to kind of try and write in this timeless, universal way to actually have that effect. Because sometimes being really specific can actually capture something that people can still recognize in decades to come, if not, centuries. So it's 200 years since Keats has been writing, and I've still can find relevance in John Keats's poetry. And I've recently written a response for Keats House Museum to one of Keats's poems, and I still can find meaning in Shakespeare. And we love to see Shakespeare plays restaged and reimagined, because the stories essentially still speak to so much of what matters to us. So whether that's family, whether that's power, whether that's relationships, all those things matter still. And so I think you can be really political in your poetry, and you can make political choices by what you don't say as well as what you do say. And next question, do put any in the chat if you have some. But then the next question that I've got sent to me from someone who says, I write some of my own poetry, but I don't think of myself as very good and struggle to read aloud at my local poetry group. What first gave you the confidence to share? Um, well, I think it wasn't poetry that gave me the confidence. It was like that stuff I did when I was younger. So doing theatre, musical theatre, singing and dancing, because it was different. It was still terrifying, but it was other people's words. So I was only being judged on the performance and not on the kind of the message of the work. So maybe, reading other people's poetry aloud could be a way of practicing your performance, because you're not so caught up in your own work being judged. So if your local poetry group would allow, say, I want to come and practice my reading, I want to do that by reading another poem by someone else that I really love. And so kind of giving that best performance to that poem you love might help you think about what would be the best performance for one of your own poems. And this is just a suggestion, but I just think that could be a good way around. Equally, in your local poetry group, asking someone else in the group to read your poem aloud so you can hear it read aloud, and you can decide what you think of how it sounds read by someone else. Or at home by yourself, recording yourself. So imagine this was just me talking to myself, not to a live streamed audience. I often do record myself saying my poems aloud to hear how it comes across and to think about performance as well. So I might kind of step back from the camera and do the hand gestures and the facial expressions that I plan to do when I read the poem. And then I'll watch it back and cringe. But then I can make some decisions about, do I want to do it like that when I really do it in front of an audience, what do I want to change? And I might do another take of performing it and see what it looks like, and then that worked that time. So recording yourself could be a good way around, but also reading other people's poetry aloud to kind of take away the pressure of it being your own words. So obviously, if you read it at an event, do say whose poem you are reading so that people don't think you're trying to pass off, Keats as your own. But I'm sure you wouldn't do that. So any more questions in the chat are very welcome, but I've got a few more here. So the next one says, the Black Flamingo has been really well received with amazing praise from authors and the media and lots of recognition. Has it been exciting to be part of this journey so far? Yes. It's been really exciting to kind of win some awards and to gain some praise, only because I know that means more readers for the book, because we do think, oh, so and so has endorsed it. I like so and so, so I'll read it. Or this prize has kind of been awarded to it. Well, prizes mean good, so I'll read it. So that is kind of my kind of rationale for celebrating these awards, because I know I've judged awards, they're so subjective, and on a different day with different judges, it could have gone to someone else. So I don't kind of take it as kind of personal, kind of high praise for me. It's good timing, good fortune, but I know it's a good book because we put a lot of work into it, and a lot of people had a hand in shaping it. But I just think the awards mean more people are going to read the book, and that is what matters most to me, because we spent a lot of time working on it, and I want as many people to read it as possible. So that's one of the best bits about awards for me. And as an award judge, I know it's really tough making these decisions, and sometimes it's like really, neck and neck between a few books, and you just have to pick one. And you make decisions for various reasons. Sometimes it's like, what book needs that boost, or what book, does the world need to hear about most right now, or which book just has some special quality that you couldn't necessarily see on the page. You just feel it in your heart, and so that's just something you can't even explain why you picked it. It's just like it just gave me all the feels. So yeah, awards judges, it's a difficult job, so I thank anyone who's considered my book for any award. Yeah, thank you very much. So coming to the last kind of few minutes here, so do get your questions in if you have them, and I'll try and answer them. So this next question, it says, you are well and truly immersed in the UK YA scene now. What have you enjoyed most about joining children's publishing and UK YA authors that you particularly enjoy? So I've loved it because it is a really supportive bunch of writers, internationally actually, like YA authors really look out for each other and celebrate each other, shout each other out. Sometimes YA Twitter is really interesting. There's a lot of debates that go on that I actually keep out of most of them because I don't know, like drama. I'm already involved in poetry drama, so to get involved in YA drama is actually quite a lot. But what I've loved about YA writers is that they're willing to kind of talk to you about their experiences. They're willing to kind of read each other's manuscripts and give each other endorsements. They're willing to kind of talk about some of the challenges that they faced as well as the good things. So I think we're really open with each other, authors in YA, about the experiences that we're having. And I found that really useful as someone who's new to the world of YA, to hear from authors about their experiences, whether it's how you kind of get that second book out after the first, or whether it's how you deal with kind of kickback or kind of reviews that that frustrate you because maybe you feel like your book hasn't been fully understood. YA authors really kind of lend an ear to each other, and yeah, I have loved so many books that I've read recently, especially Pet is an incredible book, Like a Love Story it's just an incredible book. And then also Elizabeth Acevedo's The Poet X is kind of my go-to book because I love it so much. It really inspired The Black Flamingo. And then Sarah Crossan, Jason Reynolds, their writing is just stunning. And these are people that write novels in verse, the last three, Elizabeth Acevedo, Jason Reynolds, and Sarah Crossan. I'd say they are definitely ones to read. And yeah, authors that have just shown me lots of love. I've been really fortunate, to kind of do various events and be, welcomed into YA by people like Patrice Lawrence and Juno Dawson and David Levithan. So, it's just a lovely, lovely bunch of people. And I'm really fortunate that I've kind of joined at a time when there's a lot of diversity. Obviously not enough, but we're working towards much more diversity in YA, and that's something that I fully endorse. And I'm hearing about people who are working on their first YA books coming from other forms of writing, and that's really exciting for me. I can't give away any names for that, but look out for much more Black and queer YA to come. Okay, so with the last 5 minutes, are there any new projects that we can look forward to hearing and reading? Yes, of course. So I'm working on my new YA book, and it's called Only on the Weekends, and it's set here in Glasgow. If you didn't know, that's where I am. So I moved to Glasgow about a year ago now, and I decided to set my next book here because it's been such an eye-opening experience to live somewhere other than London. I've only lived in London and Brighton, and now living in Glasgow, so far from where I grew up, with amazing people who, have a different perspective, a different worldview. I thought growing up in London, I knew what it was to be British, but I actually only knew what it was to be a Londoner. And coming to Glasgow, I see, the Scottish identity and a different type of British identity that I wanted to kind of look at in a book. And on top of that, I stuck to one of the main characters being a boy moving from London to Glasgow, so I could kind of share that kind of outsider perspective coming to a new place. And his story, his name is Mac, and Mac has moved to Glasgow because his dad has got a job up here, and he's left behind his boyfriend Karim in London, and he meets a new guy called Finley here in Glasgow, and so there's a bit of a love triangle. So I'm trying my hand at writing some romance, 3 boys and 3 different perspectives. So The Black Flamingo was all from one perspective of Michael, whereas Only on the Weekends is going to be 3 different perspectives, which I'm really excited. I've written a first draft, and my editor's given me some notes, and I'm absorbing and kind of working on those and making my changes at the moment. But that will come out in August 2021. So that's something for all of us to look forward to, because by the time we're there, it means I've done it. So maybe I'll watch this back in August and be like, yay, Dean, well done. That's my message to myself. So that's almost coming to the end of our time, but I'll check what I haven't answered on these questions here. The Black Flamingo has been published in the UK and the US. Do you find the scenes are really different in each country? For me as an author, I found there's lots of crossover. Obviously, the market in America is bigger. But I think in terms of the writers, I think there's a lot of dialogue between UK and US writers. So I felt like the scene in terms of like UK YA and US YA has just become YA for me. So I've kind of I'm kind of in the middle of a Venn diagram. So I see everyone, as my contemporaries, and it's been really lovely to kind of like have a book out in both the UK and the US and kind of do events simultaneously. Like one day I'll be doing an online event for the UK and the next day an online event for America. So for me, it's kind of all one big thing. And I think that's, although, we're different countries, I think we share a lot of the same occupations or preoccupations, I should say. We are all caring about, this pandemic. We're all caring about racial inequality. We're all caring about the environment, and we're all thinking about how we can bring some of those things to light in our books. So that's something that I know, lots of authors are trying to, with a light touch and with an interesting kind of take on it, are trying to tackle the huge inequalities and some of the major threats to our lives right now in their books. But I think that's going to be really interesting to see the books that come out in the next few years and how they are dealing with this moment or not. And again, that will be a political choice of the authors, and everyone has the right to make the choice to talk about the moment or not. People have already started thanking me. That means it's time to go, right? So thank you all for joining me. And if you're watching this back, thank you for taking the time to watch it till the end of the video. And I've had a great time. So do get the Black Flamingo in your local library or your local independent bookstore, or get the audiobook. And I'm really, really happy. I was nervous about doing this, and I'm glad it's gone pretty well. So thank you, and have a happy National Poetry Day, everyone.